Welcome again, guys, to the series of finance entrepreneurs. We have the esteemed Ted Wainman again with us here, talking about all things financial. And we are into an interesting topic today about administration of your business. So, Ted, how you been keeping?
I've been doing well, Donnie. Yeah, I've been doing well. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Lockdown treating you well?
Yeah, no, I've had it with lockdown, but I do get out each day. I managed to run 10K, so that's kind of keeping me sane.
Oh, really good, really good. I've been taking walks in the afternoons or in the early mornings, but there's so much foot traffic now. I think people have been over lockdown. It's busier along the river path than normal. So
There is. Well, the end is in sight, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. So yeah, we've been talking a lot about setting up the business. We spoke about financing the business. We spoke about the directors of the business. Now, we've set up our business, right? So we're a limited company or sole proprietor. We figured out how we split the business between, all the shareholders. We've nominated our directors. Now, what happens next? How do we kind of manage our business?
Well, I guess, Donnie, like anything, you just you get out there and you do what you do. So you've got to get out there. You buy, you make, you manufacture, you provide the service, you bill your clients. You start running your business. And I think the key here is you got to start accounting for things. So the last thing you want to do is to get to the end of the year and have a shoebox full of receipts and think, oh no, I've got to go through those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
If you turn up at your accountants with a shoebox full of receipts, they're going to charge you to sort them out. So my biggest advice to any entrepreneur, any small business startup, mum's attic, starting on your kitchen table, is get a spreadsheet and get those receipts into that spreadsheet. So every time you buy something, get some kind of filing system, write the number down on the receipt, get it into a spreadsheet. So that's the first thing to do. If you send out an invoice, get a printout of the invoice, put it in a file, write a number on it, write it down in a spreadsheet. And you should therefore have a spreadsheet with two columns, one of which is all your sales, one of which is all your costs, and you're totaling them down, and hopefully the costs are less than the sales.
Yeah, I remember the first year that I was in business. I had no kind of business training or business background, and it was chaos, right? Like coming to the end of the year, having to get your company taxes done and your end of year done, and your accountant asking you for these things, and you kind of go, well, yeah, don't have that. I have no idea what it is.
And this is the thing, is that the accountants know that, and they're happy because they charge you. If you turn up with a box of receipts and, oh, my accountant does it. Yeah, your accountant does do it, but your accountant charges you for the privilege. So I kind of say, well, why give away money? Why make, so the idea is to think about what the accountant actually needs, make it as easy as possible for them. So you give them all the information in the format that they require. So maybe, for example, the receipts, they want to divide it between, what are the main categories they want to have? Do they want to have it between stationery and travel and subsistence and client entertainment? If so, set up the categories on your spreadsheet. Just go through each time you enter one, you just put it into a category, for example. So you're categorizing, and if you do that in Excel, it's very easy to extract it further down the line. And if you're not sure how to use Excel, and lots of people aren't, then your kids are pretty good at it, or find a friend who can, or teach yourself from YouTube videos, or anything like that. But you've really got to make sure that you can't just say, oh, I don't do admin, I'm just doing the business. You've got to keep an eye on that admin, and if you're not going to do it, get somebody, a friend or a colleague, to do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things about making sure that you write these things down or have it in a centralized place is, we're going to talk about it in future videos, but just giving an understanding of where your business is at, right? So if you're spending a lot of money and you're not making a lot of money, then you're doing something wrong. And
you need to know about it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Being able to see it. If you just kind of pile the receipts in a box and file it away and without actually looking at it, you won't know. You won't have any idea until the end of the year, right? You're just kind of hemorrhaging money. And there's, it's probably a good segue into like talking about software, because now, I have a tech background. So I look at any kind of tech tools that help me. So beyond the spreadsheet, there's a lot of really cool little tools that you can use to get your receipts. Take a photo of your receipt. If you go, you buy some stationery, you take a photo of your receipt, it's in your phone. Some of the banks offer software as well. Like I know NatWest has a partnership with one of the apps that allow you to kind of track your receipts, and even banks, like the banks kind of break out your expenses into categories now, because they've gotten a lot smarter.
So in terms of the software, you're absolutely right, Donnie. So there's a lot of software out there, and you start to think about, QuickBooks, for example. There's a lot of stuff out there. You can scan your receipts and it'll automatically put it into the right categories. And I think that's a really good idea. I mean, it really is. But you do need to do a little bit of research to make sure you're getting the right software for you. So you kind of need to think about, what business am I in? Does the software really deliver for me? And that's where it is worth getting some expert and independent advice. And if it's going to cost you a little bit of money, then so do your research. Don't just jump in and say, well, I've got this piece of software, it's free, or it only cost me $5 a month or £10 a month or whatever it is. So do use, I mean, once you get to a certain size, you want to start using software, but you want to be careful you're using the right software, because you need something that's scalable. I give you an example. Apple doesn't run itself on a app where it scans in receipts. So they'll be using very sophisticated software, and you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you can extract the data. You can most of these will allow you to pull information out in Excel, and you can put it into a new accounting software, so you're not limiting yourself. So that kind of scalability for the future, always thinking about the future, but thinking about trying to make it as easy as possible. And your job, if you're running a business, your job is not to be adding up receipts. Your job is to be out there making revenue, getting sales, generating leads, basically building your business. So you want to make your back end as easy and as simple as possible.
Completely. And I know we knock accountants a little bit in the video, but they are definitely worth the money, right? So, getting taking the time and finding the right accountant for you as well is really important, I think. And they will guide you into that process of how to keep your records, and what software can make things a lot easier for you in the future.
Absolutely. And it's I mean, there's a great quote from a movie called Shallow Grave. You may not have seen it, where the guy says, there's a whole world out there and it needs to be accounted for. And you're absolutely right. Everything we do, it's got to be accounted for. And it's a legal requirement. You actually do have to record your sales and your expenses, and you are not allowed to get to the end of the year and go, I don't know what my profit was. You actually have, so this is a legal requirement. We talked about the legal requirement under the directors. So if you're a director of a business, you have a legal requirement, a statutory requirement, to actually make sure that you maintain good books and records, and you can personally get into trouble if you fail at that. So getting the right systems and processes, getting everything kind of getting it all recorded on a regular basis is not only going to provide you with information about how your business is performing, it's a legal requirement. And again, so where do we get an accountant from? You got to network. You've got to ask people. Go to networking events, go to small business events, go and meet like-minded people. The great thing is that if you're making jam on your kitchen table, you're not in competition with somebody who's setting up a kind of Facebook part 2. So you can have these kind of conversations. Those networking events are really useful. Like, can you recommend me a lawyer? Can you recommend me an accountant? Can you recommend, asking, and this is a great opportunity for those types of events. So, networking events worth their weight in gold, as far as I'm concerned.
I completely agree. You learn so much from, those networking events. And Ted, we all know that you're the king of networking. You do it so easily. But yes, it's so good to go out and meet people and understand, and they will point you in the right direction. People are a lot more helpful than society tends to think. People always try to help one another, and I think that's slight tangent from our topic, but the confidence of entrepreneurs. If you have to be really confident in what you're doing. And then you don't mind sharing little bits of secret about what how you're doing stuff. If you have a really good accountant, you will be more than happy to share the experience with somebody else.
Yeah.
So,
well, Donnie, we'll do a session on networking. We'll definitely we'll
should
put that into our agenda. So the other thing we're going to do is you've got to set up a business bank account. So you cannot have, if you've got a separate legal entity, your separate company now leads its own bank account. You can't run a business through your own bank account. So if you're a self-employed, then you can run your business through your own bank account, but you need to make sure that it's accounted for separately so that you can you can pull them apart. But if you're going to run a limited company, that limited company, separate legal entity, needs its own bank account. So you now need to go and find a bank that will deliver you a bank account. And certainly here in the UK, at the moment, we're used to having free banking. Most business bank accounts you have to pay for. So be aware that suddenly you're going to now have you've got costs of your software on an ongoing basis, your accounting software, you've got costs of the bank on an ongoing basis. You can sniff around and find free bank accounts, but be prepared that suddenly your standard outgoings are now going to become suddenly you've got to hit certain hurdle rates every single month because of these outgoings.
Yeah, completely. And just on the business bank account things, you need a lot of them, like with most kind of offers, they give you a startup offer where you don't pay any fees for 6 months or a year or whatever. But you need to be very careful about what those fees are going to be when they start coming in, because you get hit for every transaction. So, like you have the cost of the monthly subscription for the bank account, which might be whatever it is. But then you get charged for every transaction that goes on through the bank account when you say paying suppliers or paying employees and any outgoing or incoming, they charge you. So it's very important to kind of shop around.
And I reiterate that, Donnie, that not only is it important to sort of shop around, but also to think about what type of business you're in. So, I bank with a company where I actually get free banking, but I have to hold a certain amount of money in my bank account. That's not a problem for me. I can do that.
Yeah.
But what they do is that they will charge me cash. They will charge me if I want to deposit cash or I want to deposit checks.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a problem for me because I don't deal in cash and I don't deal in checks. I deal in direct debits. But if you're selling flowers on the corner, you're going to be dealing in cash, and you're probably going to have to bank that cash, and it's going to cost you. So you need to think about, is the business bank account that I'm looking at, is it right for my business? And it may have been recommended by a friend, but they may have a different business model. Okay, so it's what's right for me, what fits me.
And that's an interesting point as well, Ted. So like there's many businesses now that are very difficult. So we do some work with companies that do medicinal cannabis, for example, and they can't, even though it's legal for them to distribute because they're all certified and everything, even having CBD or cannabis derived products that are legal, some banks won't touch it, right? So you have to go through a long process to get those banks. And a lot of these
or just go to cryptocurrency, Donnie.
Well, exactly, yeah. That's what made it famous. But like a lot of these digital challenger banks are now offering also business accounts and makes they make it a lot easier to get your first current account for your business.
Absolutely.
A lot easier. I just wanted to say one thing about the business bank account. So yes, you need to get a current account for your business. But one of the things that somebody told me very early on, and it's saved my life so many times, is having a savings account for the business as well. And it's just good to be able to, put your corporation, your tax and your VAT away as soon as it comes into the current account and you have it into your savings account. It makes so much difference in terms of making sure that you have that money to give back to the, to HMRC at the end of the quarter or year as you need to.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, actually, Donnie. And I think that we're starting to get into sort of small to medium-sized businesses. So small businesses, if you're a small business and you're quite conservative and risk averse, when you make a sale today, you know part of that sale is tax, you put the tax on one side. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that's prudent, but it's not necessarily efficient, because what you're doing is you're just building up a ton of cash which is sitting there and it's not doing anything for
Right.
you. So if you start to think about like a big business, what a big business is saying is that I'll take the money today and invest it, and I'll
Right.
spend it today in order to generate a return, because I'll have enough money when the tax bill comes from other sources that I'll be able to pay
Right.
it. Okay. And this is where we start to think about cash flow forecasting. And what it might be worth doing is actually doing a sort of a session on finance and cash flow forecasting, and how that all works. So I think you're absolutely right, for for very much kind of mum's kitchen table, mum's attic. If we're setting up the very small company, it's nice not to get a sort of a nasty, horrible howler at the end of the year and go, oh my God, I have to pay this massive tax bill.
Yeah.
But once we get, and this is where management information and financial information is really important, because once we get into this going concern, what we're not doing is making a sale today and just putting some money on one side to pay a tax bill. We're making a sale today and tomorrow, and and we're starting now to just to know that there's going to be expenses coming, and that we're going to be generating income at a future point in time to pay those expenses.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So just talking about that, Ted, and like, what are some of the systems and processes that you kind of recommend for small businesses or even larger ones, right? So what are some of these kind of standard processes that you set up as to help with running of the business from the finance side?
Well, I think that, I mean, the key here, it's all about scalability.
Yeah.
And I want you to, to imagine, for example, that you're a sailor, for example, and you're a very good sailor, and you sail your little dinghy around the harbor, and you're king of the local boat club. You can beat anybody around the course. It's not a problem. Okay. Yeah. And now I want you to imagine that somebody said to you, you're such a great sailor that we want you to captain a fleet of 500 boats as they sail across the Atlantic.
Right.
Now, being a good sailor is only part of the skill. Suddenly, you've got a huge number of challenges, and you need to think about what systems and processes would I want to have in place so that I didn't leave the harbor and suddenly find all my boats just set off in different directions, of people going, oh, well, I've decided, there's some dolphins down here, I'm going sightseeing. And another one says, there's a storm coming, I'm battening down. You kind of need something which is going to control the business. And if you don't have systems and processes, you can never let go. Yeah. And if you never let go, you can never grow. Okay. So this is a really, and I see this so often. I see businesses which grow, and then the person in charge just can't let go. And as they can't let go, it actually, it starts to hold the business back, and actually can. I mean, I've seen a business go bust as a result of this. Yeah. It grew from nothing to, very, very successful, 15 million turnover a year, and then just blew up, because the individual in charge couldn't let go. Why not? Because he didn't have the systems and processes to allow him to trust his staff.
Yeah.
So you're starting to think about, for example, you might talk about your stock control, for example. So, where do you keep your stock? If somebody else is going to go and get some stock, how do you know that they're not slipping some in their pocket, for example?
Yeah.
Let's say you're selling jars of marmalade. How do you know that they don't take 10 out and put one in their pocket? What are your controls around that? Are you doing a stock take? Are you counting it on a regular basis? Are you monitoring who's going in and out of the stock warehouse? Are you keeping it locked? Think about your debtors, for example. So the people who owe you money. So I come and work for you, Donnie, for example. I then make a sale to my friend, bank a very big bonus, and then my friend turns out to be a completely fake company. I've left the company, you've sold, you know, etc., etc. You think about your suppliers. How do you know that you suddenly got people who are working for you? How do you know that it's not their mates who are supplying you with goods and services and they're taking backhanders along the line, etc., etc.? So all of these are kind of considerations. And what you're starting to think about is, as you get to a certain level, you kind of, you might want to think about employing a bookkeeper. So typically people would use an outsourced bookkeeper to keep an eye on those receipts, although that's becoming increasingly redundant with all this software.
Yeah.
Then we start to move into having an accountant who's actually part of my business, and ultimately a financial controller. And a financial controller is one of the few people who do what it says on the tin. They control your finances.
Right.
Now, here's the problem. You'll read in the newspapers about financial controllers who now suddenly have all of the systems and processes, and they start to kind of, they can nick all the money. They can start to sort of suck you dry. And if they're good at it, they can do it without you actually finding out, because you don't really have a handle on it. So again, it's difficult to describe here, but it's worth bringing in some consultants or whoever to help you just to set and establish what are those systems that you need, what are the methods of authorization, bank reconciliations that reconcile, trial balances that balance, for example. A kind of, there's got to be a rhythm to your business, and the rhythm to your business to a typical business is often around a month. So we have a month end close, a review of the accounts. Are we happy? Are the key performance indicators working? Etc., etc. And the earlier you can get into that kind of rhythm, the more scalable your business is going to be.
Completely. I think some of these startups, or anybody, these new founders listening to this, they kind of go, well, why do I have to do all these things? But it's definitely one of the things that you're not told about when you're starting a business, especially if you don't have like finance background or even kind of like running a business background. It's all these little processes that you never thought.
It's thinking about, think about the processes as operational. Okay, so you've got financial processes, but you've also got operational processes, and your operational processes is allowing you to give autonomy to other people in your organization. Give your sale, who's in charge of your sales, give your sales director, autonomy, but you've got to control them. Otherwise they'll go off and do whatever they want effectively.
Absolutely.
So, things like budgeting and forecasting, very, very simple, but just, getting your marketing director or your marketing employee to come up with a marketing plan for the year, to cost it. There's your marketing budget. You authorize it. That becomes their budget. And then you clip them around the year if they go over budget.
They don't get enough.
Discipline. And nobody wants to do a budget because it's boring, and we're starting this exciting business, and it's all fly by the seat of your pants, and here we go, and the excitement is fantastic, but I'm afraid I've got my accountant's hat on. If you're not boring, or if you're not boring, employ somebody who is boring. Employ somebody who's just going to make sure that the I's are crossed, the T's are dotted, or maybe it's the other way around, that everything adds up, that the processes are working, that the authorization limits. And if you put in place a process that says do not spend more than X, you've then got to have a way of monitoring that, and you've got to actually a way of enforcing that, because otherwise it's irrelevant. There's no point having a process that nobody sticks to.
What of my
I'm just going to share my favorite process was from one business where I said, do you have a process? And he said yes. So I said, can I see it? And it said yeah. And it just said a few words. It said, don't goose the numbers. I was like, that is not a process.
Well, we had one of the portfolio companies that we work with at Six Berries. When he started off, and he brought in a bookkeeper, and she was so much more than a bookkeeper. She got everything organized. And she put in all those financial controls. So everybody now has to make sure that they submit the receipts. So as he grows the business, he doesn't have to day-to-day kind of worry about where's my money, what's going on, but the controls are there. They set up processes that says, everybody has to, you have a certain budget to do X. You submit your receipts at the end of the day, end of the week, but it needs to be submitted. If it's not submitted, she runs around and smacks him over the head to make sure that it's set in place.
Well, it sounds to me like he's very lucky, because if he's paying for a bookkeeper, he's getting someone who's close
Well,
to
yeah.
the controller.
Yeah, I think she's more of a CFO than a bookkeeper, but she started off. I think he was such all over the place initially that that
and you know what, it's fine. We're different characters, Donnie. So and this probably brings me to my kind of the last point we're going to talk about, which is your management team. You can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So you've got to work out, what am I really good at? What am I not so good at? And if it's the admin, then go and find somebody who's actually going to help you do that admin.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that, if I'm quite outward going and, extrovert and gregarious, the last thing I want to do is to hang out with some really boring accountant. But you kind of need them on your team. Yeah. So don't look for people who complement, who are like you, people who complement your weaknesses. Work out what you're not so good at. Yeah. Bring in people who complement that aspect that you're not, and allow you to really focus on your key strengths. And you can do that if you have the systems in place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And somebody gave me some really good advice, and he was a mentor. And he said to me, look, if you want to figure out where your business will be in 3 years, really start thinking about the roles that you need in your business and draw out an org chart. And so you draw the org chart and you say, okay, you're the CEO, you might need your COO, you might need a CFO, you might need whatever. And then put your name in every one of those boxes initially, because you're doing all of those things now. And what you need to start doing is that you need to start finding people to fill those roles, because you can't do those things, right? You're the CEO. You have to do the CEO job. So eventually what you'll do is you just start putting people into those roles, because you know that you need somebody to be your chief financial officer. What does a chief financial officer do? They put in the processes, the financial controls, right? So they will go out. You can now go out and find somebody that you put into that role, because that's not what you need to do. Even if you're good at it, you're the CEO. You need to do CEO stuff, right? And there is a role for, the CEO has to lead the company and help with everything else. So, the best piece of advice I was given in terms of scaling your business, going from 1 person to 10 people to 100 people, was to kind of do that org chart early on, and just kind of go through that exercise.
Yeah, that sounds a brilliant piece of advice. And it's you mentioned the word CFO. Yeah. If you're sitting at your kitchen table making pots of jam, you can't say, I need a CFO. You don't need a CFO. You need a bookkeeper, or you need somebody who's just going to look after the receipts. Yeah. So don't worry too much about the names we give to the boxes. We get very hung up on job titles. Yeah. It's like, you're in charge of the finances, you're in charge of the sales, you're in charge of the marketing, right? Let's go, and that's what you're looking for. So some kind of administrator, somebody who, and this is where, this is part of the fun of startups, is that we end up doing everything from changing the light bulb to the marketing plan, but somebody who, clearly delineating somebody's task, giving them a sense that, you're in charge of my diary and making sure all the receipts are recorded in this spreadsheet at the end of each month, and that it adds up, for example. But then I've got to have the confidence, we will sit down every month and we will do it, and we will do it every single month, because if I don't do it, guess what? It won't get done. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the problems start to stack up. Oh, I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you didn't think it was important because you weren't asking me for it. Oh, yes. And I've seen that. I've seen, people who they run from fire to fire, trying to put them out, without really sitting down and going, right, your point, what is the strategic focus on the strategy, build your team around you, build a good team around you. And the best example of this I've come across recently is a chap called Ben Francis.
Okay.
You heard of Ben Francis?
I don't recognize the name.
Gymshark.
Oh, Gymshark. Yes, I know Gymshark.
and looking at Gymshark, and I don't know the business, at all, but I've looked at I've done some financial analysis on their accounts. he's got himself a CFO and a CEO. Okay, now he's clearly very visionary, very ambitious. He gets kind of marketing, but he's brought in these guys at a very early stage to run the business. They're well remunerated, so that he looks after them. But none of them are greedy in terms of taking too much out of the business. Most of the profits are put back into the business to grow it. But he clearly realized, I'm going to need help. He's got the right people into the right place, and good systems and processes, and the company is it's a rocket ship. It's on its way to Mars.
Yeah, it is good, doing really well, and that's an interesting point there. So there's two things: is like control, realizing that again, you're making brownies or whatever it is you're making. You might be the best baker, so maybe you continue baking and get somebody else to be, CEO of the company to help you kind of scale that. And then also the other point that you touched on is responsibilities and accountability. So as you grow, people need to be responsible for their departments or the things that they, finance or technology or whatever. But also be accountable and realize that they need to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, and hold that accountability in place, and put in kind of, again, systems to measure that accountability. So it's not just from a financial perspective that we need to make sure that we have kind of metrics around what we're doing, but in every department, everybody should have, their KPIs. What's their performance indicators that then measure up to what the business's performance should be.
Yeah, we use it too often, but we talk about SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, or agreed, realistic, and time-bound, for example. Yeah. But I think that's increasingly important in this virtual world we live in today, where you need to know what you require from the people who are working for you, and more importantly, they need to know that.
Yeah.
So you need to be both on the same page, what you expect them to do, and they know what is expected of them, and the support you're going to give them. We're getting into the leadership aspect here. Clarity is everything. Don't just, I need a better marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Work out what are the metrics, how are you going to measure this stuff? And again, this is all coming back to kind of processes and controls and boring stuff. But you need that. It's you're flying an airplane. You can't fly an airplane without a control panel. You need that information to tell you what's going on. You need to read it and you need to react to it.
Yeah.
So, processes, administration, keeping your receipts, it's boring. Nobody likes it. You get to the end of a 12, 14-hour day and you sit there and go, I just can't be bothered. I'll do it tomorrow. And if you do that too often, the pile is too big, and then you think, and then you start to hide from it. Get on top of it, stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Pay your kids, pay somebody to do it, on an hourly basis or on a part-time basis. There are people out there who will do it, but make sure you stay on top of your admin.
Yeah. Excellent. That was a good chat, Ted.
Well, good to speak to you, Donnie.
Yeah. I think, the key takeaway is to, just do the boring stuff. I heard one quote recently about success and luck, and it's not you get lucky and then you work hard. It's you work hard and then you get lucky. So
the harder you work, the luckier you get as well.
Exactly. So that's the key takeaway today.
Absolutely.
So thanks, everyone.
Good to see you, Donnie.
Yeah,
we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks, everyone, and we'll be we'll be back with episode 7 and some more finance.
I think we're branching out a little bit, Donnie. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about. Maybe we'll talk about networking, but I think we got some finance stuff coming up as well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about some tech at some point as well.
Absolutely.
I can school you. See you guys. Take care.